Welcome back, Whole Nine Yards here on a Monday afternoon. Just going to get straight into the All-Star Game stuff. By the way, for anybody on the video side, we do have the university photographer here shooting us just for some stuff for the university. So, but whatever. We'll just get straight into it. We'll start off with the skills challenge. We'll go in order. To me, I mean, I've always found the skills challenge to be completely irrelevant. I mean, it's the same kind of with the 3-point contest, like where in the dunk, where they try to change it every year to make it, they want to find something that works.
Yeah.
None of it ever really does work. I don't know exactly how it was the year before this year, but I know there was some changes.
Well, I think for the last couple years it's been the same, but before they changed it.
Okay, I mean, yeah, so Sabonis won it, right? Sabonis won it this year. When I was watching it, I mean, I just didn't care. I mean, I just don't care. I mean, it's basically just run, make a pass, take a layup, make it unless you're Chris Paul, and then make your three. I mean,
well, the thing about Chris Paul, I mean, he's 0-5 in skills competitions, which you wouldn't. I mean, you think of Chris Paul, you'd probably think that he'd. I know it's dumb too. Like, I agree with you, but you'd think he'd at least win one time. But he's 0-5. But
yeah, I mean, I guess the big men. I mean, they were talking about on the TNT thing, the big men are better at the competition. I don't know that that's necessarily true or whatever, but
I think they've won more since they went to this format. I think they've won more than guards have. I know Porzingis won 1 year. Sabonis won this year.
I mean, why would you think that would be? I mean, I don't have like a reason.
I mean, it really comes down, like, when watching it, it really comes down to the 3-point shot. Because, I mean, the other stuff, it's like they're basically the same, throughout, like, the whole competition. They're basically at the same length anyways until you get the 3-point shot. So I don't know why that big men are better at shooting threes than guards. That's just what it seems like. So, but
yeah,
I'm pretty sure, like, out of the last, like, 5 years, I think 3 big men have won.
I mean, so they gave Doncic and Chris Paul the byes or whatever in the tournament, and they both lost. So, I mean, I don't know exactly how if they want to make it into something that is held in the same regard as, I guess, the 3-point and the dunk contest, and not that those are like super important, but if they want the skills challenge to have the same type of meaning and same type of, when you say it, people know what it is outside of like people like us or whatever. I mean, I feel like you have to, for the seeding, I would love for the winner to have to come back next year. If you win, you should always be coming back the year after that. So Sabonis should be back. He should have a bye. He should have a bye, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought the names in the skills challenge, though, I mean, those are pretty solid names. I mean, Doncic, Paul, Sabonis, even Vucevic. I guess Covington was like probably the least notable player there, and even then, Covington is, I mean, he's a solid. Any NBA fan knows who Robert Covington is, so I thought the names there are fine. If they could make it, I mean, why is it so dependent on just making one 3-point shot? I'd like for, I think.
Well,
do you think the timing thing is better, where it's timed, or do you think?
Well, that's what I was gonna say. Do you like it better when it's 2 people going up against each other, or is it 1 person by themselves and it's timed? Because I like the timed one better, like the way they used to have it, where you'd have to make the layup at the beginning, do the dribbling moves, make the pass, do it again on the other side, then make the 3. I kind of like that better.
Yeah, I mean, I think the timed is better just because it puts an emphasis on everything there, not just like casually make the pass, casually shoot the layup, and then kind of jog down. And if you make the 3, you probably win.
Yeah.
If you don't, I mean, you probably don't.
Because even if you get there first, like in the way it is now, if you miss the 3, then all the other guys do is just make it. Like, so it doesn't really matter if you get there first. So I kind of like the time better because I think that it, like if you're going last and you have a time to beat. So I don't know, I kind of like that one better.
And I think they should add something. So, I mean, you have the pass, the layup, the 3. Let's get something else in there. I mean, it's just super bland. I think there should be something else. I mean, I don't know what you would define as like part of the skills challenge or whatever, but something else. Maybe it's something that has to do with jumping or something that has to do with just straight speed.
Yeah.
Or just
that's kind of what it was. The straight speed was what it was before. I mean, you'd have to go from one end of the court to the other to finish a layup to finish the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know. They definitely should add something because it's like I'd rather change it back to the way it was where it's 1 person goes by themselves and then everyone else gets timed like that, or add something else in it if you want to keep it how it is right now?
I want to say from my past experience of watching the timed ones that it was majority guards because that's all I remember is guards. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
yeah.
So I guess if you want to get big men into it, you kind of have to do what it is today. But I still think the timed can still be relevant. Maybe add something then that slightly favors big men. Maybe it's, I mean, you wouldn't do like post move, but something that's slightly more big men emphasized. I don't know what it would necessarily be, but maybe add something vertical involved. I don't know what you want to make it, but maybe a dunk. You have to do this certain dunk. Something. I would like to see more there because it's so bland. It's so 2 seconds and it's over. I just don't care for it. But we'll move on. After that was a 3-point contest. Unfortunately, as a Celtics fan, I was kind of hoping to see Jaylen Brown or Tatum do well. I mean, Tatum had the nice first round.
Tatum was good.
But after that, the second round, he had 17 points in total, which was what Jaylen Brown had in the first round. I thought the 3-point contest it's a 3-point contest. It's tough to innovate. I thought that the actual 3-point shots, not the ones that are 1 and 2. I thought those shots were nice. I mean, it puts an emphasis on being able to, and this is not just for a 3-point contest, but it reflects the actual game itself, which is being able to shoot beyond the arc. I mean, that's part of what makes Steph the best 3-point shooter ever is he's able to shoot from anywhere on the court. I mean, it's basically what distinguishes him from, I guess, if you want to say Ray Allen or Reggie Miller, it's part of what distinguishes him from them. I thought it was a 3-point contest. I mean, I thought it was fine. Steph, that last shot I was like, is it going to go in? I mean, I think that's about the most you can hope for a 3-point contest. I don't know exactly how you would make it better.
Yeah, and it was fun. I mean, you had the first round was really good. I mean, except for Jaylen Brown, everyone else got, I think, more than 22. Steph had 31, which was a record, even though the rules have changed where you have the 3-point shot. But still, I mean, I think the total amount of points you can get the way it is now is 40, and he got 31. So, I mean, he only missed not even 9 shots, just 9 points. And then for the second one, I mean, I didn't think Mike Conley, I know he could shoot the ball really well, but I didn't think he would make 27 in the final round. And, Steph, I mean, if he didn't, I think he made 8 out of his last 10 shots. I mean, he would have lost if he missed just 1 shot. So it was.
Well, he could only miss 1 out of his last. He missed 1, then made the last 2.
Yeah, on the last track, he could only miss 1, then he missed, I think it was the third ball he missed. But. Yeah, I thought that's exactly how you want it to go. I'm pretty sure last year it also ended like that with the last second shot or the last shot to win it. And yeah, I mean, Steph, he had 31 and 28, which I think that's probably the most ever in 3-point contest history, I would say. I'm not sure, but I would say. At least in 2 rounds. I know there's been tiebreakers, so I wouldn't count that. But
yeah, I would assume so. The dunk contest, though, I mean, that was just... The dunk contest hasn't been good for a majority of the past, basically, decade. I mean, other than you had a couple very solid years where you had Levine and Gordon. I think people can remember those years. I think it was 2016, 2014, maybe. I think it was those 2 years.
No, it was 2016 and 2018.
2016, 2018 then. But other than those 2 years, we've basically had nothing. I mean, we had 1 year. Well, obviously, this year is Anthony Simons, Obi Toppin.
Cassius
Stanley. Other years it was you had absolute no names. I forget who that there was that center who could only rebound and he was in the dunk contest Chase Budinger. There was a bunch of years
Andre
where
Drummond was in the dunk contest.
Drummond. I don't know why we can't just mandate if you're playing in the NBA when we're picking this stuff, you don't have a say in it unless it's for injury reason or for some valid reason.
Unless you're in the 3-point or the skills, because usually it's the same day, not all in one day, in everything. Yeah. So unless you're in the 3-point or the skills, you should do the slam dunk because you need names. That's the whole point of the slam dunk. It's these guys are probably better dunkers than most guys, just because Cassius Stanley, he's probably not going to make it in the NBA, but what he is good at is dunking. But, you'd rather have a name I know LeBron's not going to do it, but if you ever had LeBron in it, you'd so much rather have LeBron than anyone else. So they definitely should make people do it.
I 100% think there should be some sort of agreement that when you're playing in the NBA, maybe it's not every year that the NBA has the right to just pluck you out of the crowd and say you're doing either dunk or 3-point or skills or something like that, but at least every so often, because we should have at least one LeBron. We should have at least one Zion at some point in his career, and if he never does, that would be a shame. And I'm not saying everybody has to be a name. I do think there's a place for a Cassius Stanley or a Derrick Jones Jr. or a Terrence Ross. And I guess Terrence Ross and Derrick Jones Jr. are a little bit bigger names, but at the time they kind of weren't, especially Jones Jr. I think every year there should be people like that, just kind of like the underdog guy, kind of, but there should be an array of different types of players. I mean, maybe a big guy, a small guy, a forward, obviously names. It's just what we have now. I don't know why people don't want to do it. I don't care. It's horrible content. I would rather LeBron be in the dunk. I mean, anybody would rather LeBron or Zion or one of these big-time guys be in the dunk contest and sit out of the All-Star game. 100% every time, all the time, right? I mean, I would rather have LeBron in the dunk and not in the All-Star game.
I would say at this point, yeah. I mean,
I would say that with most people.
I mean, maybe. But,
even Zion.
But, I mean, the thing is, you can do the dunk and the All-Star game.
You can, because I'm just saying.
Because normally it would be different days. But, yeah, I mean, like, for next year, assuming that it's going to be somewhat normal and that they could at least have 2 days to do it, I'd like to see Zion, Ja Morant, maybe Giannis. I don't think he would do it, but like someone like the Giannis, like again, LeBron's not going to do it. Like you need the names, like the younger guys who are going to do it. Maybe Jaylen Brown. I know Jaylen Brown could dunk before, so like just names like that, like names who may not be like the top names, like maybe not Giannis, but like guys who are younger who are clearly all-stars and really good players who can also dunk, pretty well. Because it doesn't have to be like the best dunkers, as long as you can dunk somewhat and you're a bigger name, then people would rather have that.
I'd like to see a once every 2 or once every 3, or I'd like to see a once out of every time you sign your contract. So if LeBron signs a 3-year contract, one out of those years, the NBA should be allowed to just make him be in the dunk contest.
I don't know. That's pretty tough.
I don't see why not, because we're at the point where nobody is doing this stuff, and it's just going to die. And
I don't know, but
we're out of idea. Like we're out of you can't renovate the dunk contest anymore.
I don't disagree with having the NBA kind of make someone do it, but I wouldn't do it based on their contract. I mean, that's just I don't know. That I wouldn't just do it on that. I would do like every single year you have the pool of players and you just choose 4 guys to do it. Usually it's 4 guys, so I'd choose 4 guys to do it. And the NBA, and look, if they're injured or their team doesn't want them to do it, then that's like the only reasons that they shouldn't be able to do it.
I don't think the team should have a say.
I think
it should only be injury. I think it should only be injury.
I think the team should only in the sense that, like, they don't want their guy to get injured, or he's coming off an injury, or they just want to limit him, something like that. I don't think that's a problem. Because not every team's going to say no. I mean, there's going to be teams that are going to say yes.
Well, but if I'm LeBron, I just go, oh, hey, Lakers.
Yeah, no, and they could do that. Like, a player could just be like, all right, why don't you just say no because I don't really feel like doing it. But the majority of the guys their teams will say yes, and they'll probably say yes.
I just don't think it's an outrageous ask to be like, hey, LeBron, you're going to be a billionaire in about 3 years, all because of the NBA. And obviously, I know that LeBron deserves to be a billionaire, but I don't think it's an outrageous ask to be like, hey, one of these years, let's get you in a slam dunk contest. It'll make you money. It'll make me money. It'll entertain the fans. It'll give everybody what they want. I mean, it helps your legacy out. It should, at least in theory. Why not one of these years? Let's do it. Because, frankly, the fact that you haven't participated in it yet it's killing the dunk contest. Because LeBron's almost an example for the rest of the league. If LeBron doesn't want to do it, maybe that motivates Zion to be like, hey, I'm just not doing it. I don't want to do it. Because what does Zion even have to gain out of it if you really think about it? But if you don't think about it like in the way of, maybe legacy or something like that, then you get a good product. And I think that's kind of what it was before it became somebody like LeBron just not doing it for some reason. I don't know why it happens to be like that, but
yeah, no, I'm pretty sure Zion will do it at some point, but I think it's different in that like the dunk contest is so like just dry right now. Even when you had Gordon and Levine, like they were really good, but they also weren't big names at the time. It's just that they were really good in the dunk contest. But over the last kind of 10 years, ever since kind of like Blake Griffin, it hasn't really been like a huge name that's really been in there. So I would say just with the way it is and how dry it is now, they'll probably have Zion do it because he said he was probably going to do it this year, but then he didn't. He was also in the All-Star game, and I don't know, maybe the Pelicans probably didn't want him to do it either, but I can see him doing it in the future. But for LeBron's case, He definitely should have done it when he was younger. Now, he could say like the dunk contest was more like field, like you had Dwight Howard, Nate Robinson, who was in there.
He probably would not. He might not even win, but
like he should have been in there when he was younger, even though the field was better than it is now.
yeah. I mean, so if the league were to not step in, or somebody were to not step in, LeBron would never do the dunk contest in his career because we're at the point where there's no reason for him to.
Well, yeah, he's not going to do it. I mean, even if the league says he's going to do it, he's not going to do it. Because why? I mean, why would he want to do it now? So,
I'm just saying, and I guess I'm using LeBron as more of the example, but for the rest of the league, I just think the league needs to step in and say, next CBA, like next contract we establish here, like we got to have something because we're just these, for some reason the skills challenge and the 3-point gets people. Doncic, Paul, Curry, Tatum, Brown, Conley, and then Mitchell, and then the dunk contest, Anthony Simons, Obi Toppin, Cassius Stanley.
Yeah, I mean, the names just aren't there. And the 3-point's probably always going to have the names because everyone shoots 3. So you're going to have Trae Young, you're going to have Curry, Clay if he's healthy, Tatum, when other guys start coming up, like Booker. You're going to have so many guys in the 3-point that are going to be bigger names than the ones in the dunk contest. And that's probably the problem for them is that the dunk contest is supposed to be the more exciting one, but I think the 3-point is probably taking over as the most exciting event that they do.
100%, I would agree, but I don't think it should be like that.
It shouldn't be like that, but I think it's going to be like that because who really dunks anymore than shooting threes?
Well, we still have.
And who doesn't?
We have.
But who also doesn't like seeing threes than dunks right now though? I think it's kind of switched from dunks to threes.
I wouldn't agree with that. I think
if you were to ask people, like on Twitter or something, I think they'd say threes.
Okay. Would you rather see a full 3-point contest, like a full Steph rack all around, like one round of Steph, or would you rather see LeBron in the dunk contest? Because that's the best shooter of all time in a 3-point contest versus.
But the problem is someone like LeBron's not going to do it.
But I'm just saying. Because you're saying that the threes are more fun to watch or more entertaining or they're
the way it is right the way it is right now, threes are more exciting to watch. Again, if they were to make people with bigger names do it, then maybe it'd change back. But the way it is going right now, threes are going to be the bigger event.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying that we need to have people. We can't. If next year it's Al-Farouq Aminu and Brad Wanamaker, and I'm just not going to watch it. I mean,
yeah, and I think they'll probably try and change it for next year, but if they still can't get bigger names to go for next year, then it's still going to be the 3-point that's bigger because there's just so many more names that you'd rather see in a 3-point contest than the names that they have right now for the dunk contest.
Yeah. I mean, as far as the game was concerned, I mean, what were your I don't care about the All-Star game. I don't. And I barely care about the dunk contest 3-pointed skills, so it's amazing I've even talked about it for as long as I have. But, I mean, what do you think about the game?
Well, I mean, it was kind of unfair from the beginning because, I mean, Durant wasn't playing, Embiid wasn't playing for him, and then he lost Booker and got Conley, who he's not an all-star type player. There's certain players who are better in all-star games than they are in, real games, like Steph and Lillard, and that's what we saw last night. But Conley isn't that type of player, and then their team just wasn't better to begin with, even without those injuries. And now with those injuries and the COVID with Embiid, it was just clearly going to be LeBron was going to dominate the game. The team LeBron was going to dominate the game anyways. So,
yeah, I mean, I guess Giannis MVP 16 for 16. Whatever. I just don't. I mean, okay. To me, the All-Star Games is not exciting to watch, really. Is it cool to see Lillard and Steph pull up from the logo completely uncontested, defenders sitting behind the 3-point line? I guess. Is it exciting a little bit? Sure. Would it be exciting to bet on the games and stuff like that? Prop bets, all that? Sure. Is it an exciting game itself? No. So, yeah.
Well, I think it's better the way they do it now with this target score.
Yes, but I still think it has more potential. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just like the Pro Bowl and the All-Star game in the MLB and a lot of the stuff where it's just like it just isn't for me. It just doesn't do it for me. The competitive aspect isn't necessarily there as much as I would like it to be, but I guess
Well,
that's
it's never
probably.
going to be like super competitive, but I think the way they do it now is better than it's been in years past. In that at least they try in the fourth quarter now. I mean, like even before when they get to the fourth quarter, they still wouldn't try. So at least they're trying now, and I think it's better. Like the first half should be like the fun stuff where you're not playing defense. Then like the middle of the third quarter, it should change to like a little bit of defense, and then the fourth quarter should be like basically a real game, kind of like a preseason game.
Yeah,
Which
that's fair.
I think that works. I think people are happy with how it is. Now, in 5 years, will they change it? I mean, maybe, but I think for what it is right now and what it's been in years past, I think it's pretty good.
Yeah, no, it's definitely better than the Pro Bowl. I mean, I guess it's. I don't know if you'd want to compare it to the MLB All Star Game. I don't, whatever, but it's definitely better than the Pro Bowl. So
Well, yeah, the MLB All Star Game. I mean, like they're, I mean, they are trying because like you can't like not try in baseball because like you can't like throw 70 miles an hour when you throw 95. So
yeah.
I guess it's hard to compare it to that, but the Pro Bowl definitely. I mean, they don't try in the Pro Bowl at all.
Do you have a favorite? So out of all, whether it be an All Star Game, whether it be a skills challenge or a home run derby or the NFL skills challenge, I mean, do you have a favorite event out of any sports All Star weekend?
Well, I usually say dunk contest, but I'd probably, with the way it has been going recently, I probably can't say that's number one. I'd probably say the home run derby.
I would agree.
I think it's just the
100%.
most fun, and the way they changed their rules. I mean, they used to go from outs, you had 10 outs, and then they changed it to, and it was total home runs combined throughout the rounds. Now they changed it to you go up against one person, and it's time based, which I think is way better. So I'd probably go home run derby.
Yeah, I think my idea would be head on head in just a tournament, but with outs. I don't know that I love the time. Um,
I think it brings like a strategy into it because you have a timeout. It's how tired am I gonna get in? I think it's 3 minutes they have, and you have the bonus
what else?
round.
Maybe it's-
So I think it's rather 2 or 3 minutes. I think it's 3 minutes though, but I just like it better than it was with outs. I don't know. I just feel like it's more exciting. I
Fair.
feel like.
No, I mean I think I'm it's really there's not too much of a difference. So yeah, but I would agree that home run derby is probably the best event right now out of any All Star weekend type of event. Um, but yeah, I mean that's All Star weekend. In other news in the NBA, I mean the Nets just gained Blake Griffin, and now I saw the 2017 Warriors and the 2021 Nets, I guess. Um, I was looking at they're all in their prime lineup versus the 2017 Warriors all in their prime lineup. And I mean, those are some stacked. If they were to all be in their prime, I mean,
Yeah.
those are the two. Just like if you had a team all in their prime, those would be probably the two best teams of all time, all in their prime.
I mean, I would have to think about the teams. I don't know about the Nets. Maybe the Warriors.
I would definitely. I mean, I think the Warriors all in their prime would be better with. I mean, you'd have Steph, Clay, KD, Draymond, Boogie versus
Well,
Kyrie.
Boogie wasn't on the 2017 team.
2018,
2019.
2019.
Well, 2018, yeah.
2018. Sorry,
The
sorry. I
2018,
should've said-
2019
sorry.
team.
Okay, sorry, 2018. But those five, and then Kyrie, Harden, Durant, Griffin, Jordan. I mean, I would probably take the Warriors.
I would take
Five?
the Warriors because, I mean, like Jordan, he's kind of a non-factor. It just offensively, I guess technically it wouldn't need the offense, but he wouldn't, even in his prime, he wasn't great defensively. But yeah, I mean, I guess those probably would be the two top teams. Definitely the Warriors. The Nets would probably be up there. I guess you just have to think of the other teams, but yeah, I would say those probably top 10 if I had to really think about it. But the Warriors would probably be top 5.
I mean, for me, like it's as far as the actual addition of Blake Griffin goes, I'm not too excited about it. He's probably washed. Can he be your fourth or fifth best player? Maybe. He can pass. He should average a solid amount of assists a game for a starting power forward. But that's about all of his abilities. I mean, he's not a great shooter. He's definitely better than he was in his rookie first few years as an athletic beast. But he's not nearly the same player he was in Los Angeles or an early Detroit. So I don't think it's that big of an addition, but I think it adds a little bit of depth. So
Yeah, it's like his stats for this year. He's averaging 12 points on 36% from the field and 31 from three. But he's clearly injured, or he's just not fully healthy from his knee injury that he had last season, or really the last kind of 2 seasons.
I mean, the question
basically.
is he going to actually recover?
Well, I don't know if he'll actually recover, but he really doesn't have to do much on this team because you have KD, Kyrie, and Harden. So I don't even know if he's even going to start, honestly. He may not even.
I think he'll start. Because I think his best attribute is probably passing right now.
It is.
And I would definitely think, I think that's best in the starting lineup rather than on the bench.
But they have Harden, so they don't really need that much passing. I think it'd be, look, he could start, and it would be, I guess, Kyrie, Harden, KD, Griffin, and then I guess they start Jordan still. But it would be interesting to see at the end of the games what they do, because the lineup they have now for end of the games with when KD's healthy is Kyrie, Harden, Joe Harris. I guess Joe Harris will be starting that starting lineup too, but Joe Harris, KD, and then even sometimes they have Jeff Green or sometimes they have KD at the 5 and they put another shooter out there. So I wonder if he'll be in that closing 5 or if he won't be. I guess it depends on how he plays.
Yeah, I would assume so if he plays all right. I mean, you would never justify putting. I mean, I wouldn't put Jeff Green in the starting lineup in the closing minutes of a game over Griffin.
It's because of his defense. That's why. I mean, Griffin. I mean, who would you rather have defensively? Because at that point, you'll need offense from your 4th or 5th best guy on the court.
Yeah. No. I mean, I guess.
So if Griffin can show that he could still play, I mean, he's basically the same height as Jeff Green. He's a bigger body, but if he could switch, because that's really the reason Green's out there, is because he could switch on guards when they do pick and rolls. So if Griffin can do that, then yeah, he'll probably play closing minutes. But if he can't, then what's his role in that closing 5 if he can't play good enough defense?
Yeah, if he can't play good enough defense, then he probably doesn't have a role there. As far as does the addition sell me more in the Nets? No. I mean, I know you're much higher in the Nets than I am, and I think I'm probably lower in the Nets than most, but I still think the Lakers are a better team. And I still think the Clippers, we talked about, I still think the Clippers are, right now, I still think they're a better team than the Nets. The Nets defensively they just scare me. And if Harden, KD, and Kyrie are playing, how they should theoretically outscore every team. But, I mean, we know that that's just not how the NBA works. I mean, obviously Harden has changed his play style a lot from coming from Houston to Brooklyn. Is that going to be enough to make everything work and to, I guess, nullify the fact that they have basically no defense?
But even, I mean, their defense has gotten better. It's still I think 20th or something like that, but
it's gotten better recently. Yeah.
But they don't have to be a top 10 defense in order to win. They don't have to be.
No, they don't have to be. I think they have to be mediocre. They have to
be 15 to 20, I'd say.
I think they have to be.
But the thing is, in a series, at least in the East, until they get to the finals, who's going to beat them 4 times out of 7 times because the Nets couldn't outscore that team?
In the East, probably nobody.
Exactly. So the only team could be the Sixers, and I think they could give up 35 per game to Embiid, and they'd still win that series in 6 games because no one else on that team is going to scare me enough in order for you guys to outscore us, or just us not to outscore you. So I think that no team in the East can handle them. Again, maybe the Sixers, but someone else would need to step up. And then when you get to the finals, whether it's the Clippers, the Lakers, really the only 2 teams at least I see getting to the finals, unless AD's fully healthy and the Lakers are rolling, I just don't see, even the Clippers, I just don't see any team beating them 4 times out of 7 times. I just can't see that happening.
100% can. But, I mean, so I've never been a Bucks fan. I've always been very low on the Bucks, but I almost feel like the Bucks have even gotten kind of pushed under the rug, or they're being ignored more than they should be, just because obviously you have Giannis. I mean, Drew, Middleton. This team's solid, and if you look at the Heat, I think the Heat were a tough matchup for the Bucks, and I think the Raptors were also still a pretty tough matchup for the Bucks. Even though the Bucks probably should have won that series, they were still a tough matchup for the Bucks. I mean, do the Nets match up well against the Bucks? Do they have somebody to? Are they going to be able to play the same type of defense that the Heat can play against Giannis and the Raptors can play against Giannis? I'm not too sure about that.
Well, the problem with the Bucks is that they're still playing the same way they've been playing for the last 2 years, and it clearly hasn't worked.
But it hasn't worked in the playoffs against the Heat and the Raptors. But it's worked against every other team.
Yeah, but, well, I mean, they played the Pistons in the first round 2 years ago, and they played the Magic last year in the first round. So, I mean, you should win those no matter how you're playing or what they're doing. You should win those series. And the Heat series, I will say that was kind of a throwaway because that was just the worst matchup possible for them, and they just had no clue what they were really in for with that team. But the Raptors series, I mean, they were up 2-0, and then they lost 4 games in a row, and it was because of their defense, and they showed a way, just build a wall, and Giannis can't get by it, or he can't, because their whole offense is him drive and then kick, or him drive, get fouled. So if you could build a wall and just limit that at least a little bit, then they can't do much offensively. And they're still good defensively, they're still really good, but, at that point, if you just can't put up points, then it doesn't really matter how great your defense is. So I agree that the Bucks are definitely underrated right now, and that the Sixers and the Nets are definitely the 2 biggest teams in the East. But unless they change something when it comes to the playoffs, if they're still going to keep playing like this, then I don't see how you could pick them to come out of the East.
I'm probably not going to pick the Bucks, but if their shooters shoot well, and I'm not sure that the Nets can do let's just build a wall, stop Giannis, and try to close out on shooters because he's driving and passing or he's driving. I'm not sure if they can play that type of defense well enough to stop Giannis to the same degree that maybe a Heat, or I guess you can throw the Raptors in there as well. I just don't know if I would give the Bucks a chance against the Nets. That's all I'm saying. Because for the majority of the game, you're going to have Kyrie, Harden, and Durant on the floor. I mean, would you put Durant on Giannis?
I think you could. Durant's a pretty good defender.
He's a solid defender.
He's been worse with the injury, obviously, but you could just throw bodies at Giannis. But again, he's not going to kill you with a long range shot. So as long as you just put bodies on him that can at least stay with him to some degree, then you're not terrible. But again, even with KD, Kyrie, and Harden on the floor, I know they're not great defensively, but it's not like the only person you could really attack would be Kyrie just because he's so small. At least Harden can somewhat body you up. If he feels like playing defense, he can actually body you up. And when it comes to the playoffs, I'm assuming that he actually will play some defense. But the only person you could truly attack is Kyrie. And neither the Sixers or the Bucks have a point guard who can really go after him. I don't trust Simmons to put up 25 every single game. I don't trust Jrue Holiday to put up 25 every single game. So I just think that a point guard, a really good point guard, could really go after them. But when it comes to the forwards or even a center like Embiid, I think they can let Embiid go for 35 every single game and still win that series. And they could let Giannis go for 30 every game and probably still win that series. So I just think that even though they're not great defensively, I think the teams that they have to play in order to get to the finals really favor them and not the other way around.
I don't think they favor. I think they match up favorably. Wow. Okay. They match up favorably against the Sixers, but against the Bucks, I'm not sure that they have like a great. I'm not sure that the Nets are like a great matchup. Or I'm not sure the Bucks are a great matchup for the Nets. Sorry, I don't know why my brain is just turning off right now, but I think if you made me pick a team out of the East to get to the finals right now, I would be tempted to pick the Nets, and I probably would. Although I'm not picking anybody right now, so I'm not picking the Nets, but I don't think this is a Warriors where it's like, all right, who are the Nets playing out of the West? I don't think it's like that at all. I would not be surprised if the Sixers beat the Nets. I would not be surprised if the Bucks beat the Nets.
I wouldn't be surprised if those two teams beat them, but I'm leaning to the point where I'm saying who is going to face the Nets in the finals. The way I see it, and like I've said, I just don't see a team beating them 4 times out of 7.
If you told me Nets are the field in the East, I would be super tempted to take the field. I would be very tempted.
I'm not 100% for the Nets. I think a team could beat them. I mean, again, assuming all teams are healthy, I think a team still could possibly beat them. But just the way they're playing right now, and if Harden's still going to be this type of play style and he doesn't go back to the old one, it's just hard to beat them because if you need Harden to step up, he can. If you need Kyrie to do it, he can. Then obviously KD's your main guy. So it's just going to be hard to beat them. It's going to be hard to match points with them, no matter how bad their defense is. It's just going to be hard.
It's going to be hard to, but I think it can be done. I mean, I think Giannis with shooters and players around him can do it. I think the Sixers are going to have a very tough time, but if you can get Tobias Harris to play out of his mind, if you can get, I mean, you're not going to get Simmons to do anything other than what he's done for basically his whole career, but if you can get Tobias to play out of his mind, if you have nobody against Embiid, right? I mean, you don't have anybody to defend Embiid, and you're right.
He's going to go for 35.
Embiid can go for 35, and you can still win that series, but who's saying Embiid, as of right now, if he even takes a slight step above what he's playing right now in the regular season, which is MVP, he's the MVP right now, who's saying he couldn't go for 45 a night? I mean, realistically.
But again, even still,
if he goes for 45 a night, that's not like a Nets or, I mean, still, I would pick if you told me he's averaging 45 a night, I'm picking the Sixers.
Well, two things. One, he's not going to average 45 a night, and even if he does, or even averages 40, I think the Nets could still win, just because, like Simmons and Harris, unless they really step up, they just don't have other scorers on the court with them. And unless they're 3-point shooting, unless they shoot out of their minds from three, the whole team, the whole series, then they're just not going to be able to put enough points up, no matter what Embiid does. So, and that's same with the Bucks. Even their 3-point shooting has to be spectacular the entire series in order for them to win. Just because I just don't think you can match points with twos, or even just having to go down every single possession and basically score all the time. I just don't think you could do that against the Nets.
I think you can, and I think if you consider the fact that Harden might not play as well as he does in the playoffs as he does typically in the regular season.
But
I think that
it's also different because usually in the regular season he'd have to average 35 points for the whole season. He's not doing that anymore. He's averaging 25.
Yes, but
he's the third option on that
unless you're
team.
going to say it's purely because of fatigue, there's a clear downgrade and play there.
There is, but I would say
it's not fatigue.
Part of it's fatigue.
I'm not buying
If you have to put up 35 for 82 games, and he does play every single game for 82 games over a regular season, you get tired when it comes to playoffs.
Even if it was fatigue, that's not an excuse, because we've seen Harden has been, out of all the top 10 players in the league, top 30 or 40 at least probably, he's the one that's consistently shown up out of shape. He's been out of shape. He's been known to basically just not care nearly as much as a Giannis or Westbrook or a LeBron about their physique. So his
body works with how he plays, though.
He is overweight. I'm not saying he has to be ripped, but
he is overweight, but that's also just how he works. It's almost like CC Sabathia, when he was pitching, if he tried to slim down and he was just way worse. Some people are just better when they're not overweight, but when they're at least a little bit over what they should be.
Again, I'm not saying Harden has to look like Giannis or Westbrook or whatever, and he doesn't have to look anything close to that. He could still look pretty much how he looks now, but we both know that Harden has a reputation for just not having that same work ethic of, rise and grind type of work ethic that a LeBron or somebody else does. And nobody matches LeBron's work ethic, really, but even like a Westbrook. I mean, Westbrook had done what Harden has done, and, he never was fatigued. Was he solid in the playoffs? No, but it was not a fatigue thing. It was a play style thing, and it was, obviously his teams weren't great as well. So I'm not gonna instantly say that Harden's playoff woes are over. I still think there's a chance. I'm not gonna bet on him being significantly worse in the playoffs, but it wouldn't surprise me. And even with Kyrie in there too, the locker room, you never know. So it's so tough for me to pick the Nets, especially, not that you asked me Nets or the field, but if you were to ask me Nets or the field, I would probably take the field right now.
I would probably take the Nets, and I could see where, a Philly or a Milwaukee could win, but right now, with the way they're playing, again, KD's not even playing right now, and they still on that run with Harden and Kyrie. It's just tough to beat him. And you add Griffin again. He's not going to add a lot, but he's going to add enough. It's just another spot in the rotation where you can add a solid player, a veteran who knows what he's going to have to do on this team, so someone gets bumped down. So I just think that with that and the way Bruce Brown's been playing, he's been playing really well because he knows what his role is, and it's to play defense and shoot threes. So he's kind of so I don't know. I just like how their team is coming into shape right now. And again, KD's not even healthy yet. So when that happens, they'll just be even better.
You would assume so. I think chemistry. KD's typically somebody we've seen with the Warriors clearly who you can kind of plug, and he's obviously he's gonna drastically change your team, but he's not somebody that you have to acclimate to, like maybe how the Celtics had to kind of acclimate to Kyrie and Hayward coming back at the same time after that finals run or Eastern Conference Finals run. I still think the chemistry is going to be a thing. I mean, not necessarily because KD's coming back, but because Harden and Kyrie will have to acclimate to KD coming back. I'm not sure that, and not that he's not a ball dominant player, not nearly as much as a Kyrie or a Harden would be typically, but I still think again, are the Nets the favorite? They're the favorite in the East, yes. Are they the favorite in the league? Maybe they're even the favorite in the league now with Griffin. I still have many doubts about them, and I'm hesitant to pick them in the East over the field or over Milwaukee or Philly right now.
Yeah, and I understand some of those doubts, but again, in my mind, the Nets are the favorite in the East, and right now I'd say in the league, unless Anthony Davis can prove that he's healthy when he comes back.
He will. I think he will.
Well, I don't know. I mean, he basically tore his Achilles. That's what the injury basically is that it's a minor. I don't know exactly what the injury is, but it leads to a torn Achilles. That's exactly what the injury that he got. So
okay, so as long as he doesn't come back in a game, which he hasn't.
Just as long as he can prove that he's still Anthony Davis, and again, this year has kind of been a down year for him, honestly, but if he can prove that he could still be a top 7 player in the NBA, then I may go back to the Lakers, or at least I'd be more hesitant to just declare the Nets as the favorite in the league. But again, the way I see it right now, the Nets are the favorite.
Anywhere else in the league? Anything of note in your opinion? I mean, right now the Jazz are the 1 seed, the Phoenix is the 2 seed.
And the Jazz have been struggling a little bit recently, which, I don't think anyone expects them. Even if they end up as the number 1 seed, no one really expects them to get to the finals. So I guess we'll just have to see what happens to them. But you're right, the Suns have been very surprising. I mean, they're 24-11, and they were honestly struggling before. I think they're 8-2 in their last 10 games. So they've been really good. Paul's played really well. Booker's playing like he should be a top player in the league. It was, again, he did make the All-Star game, but he really didn't in the initial results. So I think he's been proving that he really should be like a perennial All-Star. But yeah, again, them in the playoffs, like where do they fit in the playoffs? If they have to play a Clippers or a Lakers in the second round, they're probably going to lose in 5 games, maybe 6, but probably 5. So I don't really view the Jazz or the Suns as threats. I would say the 2 biggest threats are the Lakers and the Clippers, and I would think everyone would mostly agree with that. And we haven't even talked about the Nuggets, who are, I think they're the 6th seed right now. So are they the same team they were last year in the bubble, or are they the team that they are this year, where they've kind of been underperforming?
You're talking about the Mavericks?
The Nuggets.
The Nuggets, sorry.
The Mavericks, they have no shot to compete, honestly.
I mean, I think the Nuggets, they're somewhere in between is the answer. Are they better than the Clippers? To me, no. I didn't even think that coming into the year. Murray is, and I think I knew this, and I think after the playoffs, people were questioning, is he capable of being a 2? Or to me, my question is still, is Murray capable of being a good 3 on a team?
I think he's a good 3.
I don't know if he's a good 3. I don't know. That's what if you add Beal right now, right, Murray would be your 3.
Well, is Beal even a 2 though? That's the problem.
I think
I don't think Beal's a true number 2 on a championship.
So then Beal's
team.
a 3 though.
I think Beal's a 3
okay,
on a
so
championship team. He's a 3.
Is Murray a 3?
I think Murray's a 3.
I don't know. I don't think he is.
Depends on who that second player is. That's what it always is going to depend on. Because even though Murray would probably always be the 3 on a championship level team, it depends who that second player is. But I think he's been struggling a lot this year. Clearly he's just not the same guy he was in the bubble last year, because Jokic has stepped it up. He's basically averaging a triple double. He's averaging 28 points, which I don't think most people thought he could average more than 25. So for him to average 28, that's huge. And the way that Murray and Porter Jr. have been playing, they're just not a championship level team right now. If they were to step it up just a little bit, then I think they could be somewhat in that conversation with the Lakers and the Clippers. But the way they're playing right now, I just don't. You can't view them as a championship level contender.
Murray is in a difficult spot because he's one of those players where it's like he has to be at least a 3, and then because you can't. I mean, assuming at some point Murray gets a max contract,
Well,
you can't.
he already did.
Sorry. Yes. Okay. You can't have a max player being your 4th best player.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just plain and simple. That's just plain and simple. So it's like, do you keep? I mean, obviously you're not going to get rid of Murray if you're the Nuggets, right? But I mean, what do you do if Murray can't be a top 3 player on a max contract, and even as your 3rd player, that's risky. It's tough. I mean, it's tough.
Well, I think the question for the Nuggets is, if you were to go back in time, just earlier this season, would you have traded Jamal Murray for James Harden? Because they were saying no, he was an untouchable for them along with Jokic. But would you have done that? You know, with the way Harden's been playing, it looks like you probably could have done that, and you probably would have been better off right now, just because Murray hasn't improved since last season, or hasn't at least been able to play up to that level that he was last season. So, again, you know, based on age and everything like that, and the way Harden looked in Houston and everything, you know, you could definitely argue that you shouldn't have done it. But I don't know. It's tough because if you could have James Harden and Nikola Jokic on the same team, it would make everyone. And again, their bench is really bad. They lost. You know, they traded Malik Beasley last year. They let go of Jeremy Grant, which they probably shouldn't have done. But I think that if they were to have Harden instead of Murray on this team right now, they'd be a lot better, and they'd definitely be in that conversation in the Western Conference for a
They would be.
finals
I think
appearance.
they would be. When you have when your best player is a center, you need at least somebody who's close to as good as your center, being a guard or a point guard. I think it's something we might run into trouble with, obviously, the Nuggets, even the Sixers to a certain degree. I think Ben Simmons has to get better. I mean, clearly he has to be able to shoot the ball at some point if he's going to be a number 2 on a team. So, yeah, unless you're able to add another really solid number 2 who's a guard or like more of a point forward than an actual true forward, I just don't know if this Nuggets team can beat a Clippers, a Lakers. They can beat a Jazz, but a Clippers or a Lakers.
Yeah, they could beat like the Suns, a Jazz, you know, a Mavericks if they get a little bit hotter. Like they could definitely beat those teams, or at least be really competitive. And maybe the Clippers, you know, we'll have to see, but I don't think so. But definitely, I would say the Lakers and most likely the Clippers. Right now, with the way they're playing, they cannot compete with them. And it seems like Murray steps it up in the playoffs, but you know, banking on that is a huge ask for someone like that.
The bubble itself. The bubble just makes it. It's so hard for me to look at the bubble and predict that Murray is one of those playoff guys who just gets better in the playoffs.
2 years ago he was kind of like that though too. When they lost to the Blazers in 7 games in the second round, but the bubble is definitely weird because you rather excelled or you really struggled for most people. So it's definitely, you can't really look at that and base everything off that. But yeah, I guess you're just gonna have to see what happens when you get to the playoffs, because they'll make the playoffs. I don't know what seed they'll be, but they'll make the playoffs, and depending on who they play, I think they'd rather play like a Jazz or a Suns in like a 4-5 or 3-6 matchup possibly. That'd probably be ideal for them, at least to win a round, or at least have the chance to win a round. But they're facing the Clippers or the Lakers first round. They're probably done.
I totally forgot about the Murray contract, but Murray's signed through 2025. I guess if I'm the Nuggets, my plan may be. So first off, do any teams actually even want Murray now at this point? I mean, teams want Murray, but are they willing to give up anything like, you know, big? Unless you're in the perfect scenario where Harden is like he's not playing for the Rockets, and you know Murray might be the best you're able to get, but Murray doesn't have any true young developing star trade value like he could or should have or potentially had prior to this year.
Yeah, I mean, teams would definitely trade for him. Now, how much? Like, who would they actually give up? I don't know. Like let's say like if Beal were to get traded to the Nuggets, like would Murray and like a first round pick or like 2 first round picks be enough? I would say possibly, but also depends on other stuff too. But like, what player exactly would you be able to trade for Jamal Murray?
The problem with Murray is it's hard to trade him for the Nuggets if you're bringing in somebody like Beal, because if you bring Beal and you want Murray to be as your number 3, that's clearly your plan if you're bringing in Beal. If you're trading Murray, if a team why would the Wizards realistically want Murray? Because, I mean, unless the Wizards are stupid and think Murray can be built around and they can become a championship contender, they're only doing it just to be like a viable enough team to the point where they can like make some money on their tickets and stuff after COVID.
The reason they do it, and again, who even knows what they're going to do, would be if Beal actually, at the end of the season, if he really wants to get traded and there's just no good offers, or at least an offer that you think is really good, a Murray and 2 first-round picks is not that bad of an offer. So, if it again, Beal only has 1 year on his contract left after this year, so if you get to a point where he just wants to get traded and you got to get something back, that's not that bad of a trade.
No, that's pretty good. But then you get into the problem where it's like the Nuggets wouldn't want to give up Murray for that, because you wouldn't have to, I don't think.
Well, yeah, and
unless you'd maybe rather give up, unless the Wizards are dead set on MPJ and you're like, I mean, I'd rather give you Murray than MPJ. I don't know if you would or not.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say it depends on what Porter Jr. does. Like, because he hasn't done much either. He hasn't improved a lot. So, if he improves, like his last year to like really showcase if he's going to be like a true star is probably next year. So, do you still want Murray around for that? Do you want Beal? Do you want someone else? Do you think, do you just trade Porter because you don't think he can actually be that guy and get someone like a Beal or maybe whoever else is out there? I don't know. But that depends on what happens with Porter Jr. And the way it's looking right now, he's not really improving that much. And you can't say it's health reasons because he hasn't been injured. So I don't really know what's going on with that situation. But it's rather Murray's going to start improving, or they're going to have to look to trade him. Again, who knows if they'd actually do that, but at the end of the season, because right now, with the way they are, they cannot win a championship. Even if Murray's playing really well, they most likely still can't win a championship.
Murray and Brown were in the same draft. There was a point where, I guess technically last year, where we looked at, or at least as a Celtics fan, I looked at Murray and said, okay, maybe they should have drafted somebody, maybe even prior to that, you could say they should have drafted Murray, because Murray's taking leaps. After Brown's rookie year, he kind of died. He got worse, and he was kind of plateauing, and I wasn't sure if he was going to take that leap. Brown is now taking that leap this year, and that's a leap that we're going to have to see Murray make. I mean, he has to make it, and if not a bigger leap than Brown has made so far this year.
Yeah. And
or else he's basically just on a bad contract for an extra 5 years, and basically Jokic has to play out of his mind, and you have to get a Beal who also has to play out of his mind to even have a chance of beating somebody like the Lakers, assuming the Lakers are healthy. So You're in a tough spot as the Nuggets, at least in my mind. It's tough because, I mean, it's a really tough situation. But I mean, I think that's it though.
Yeah, I mean, I guess another surprising team would be the Knicks in the Eastern Conference. They're the 5 seed right now, 19 and 18. I mean, they had Julius Randle being All-Star. Look, when it gets to the playoffs, assuming that they're still at this level and they actually will make the playoffs, are they going to win a first round? I mean, I guess it would depend on who they play, but I would say probably not. If they're facing, Philly, Brooklyn, or Milwaukee. Even Boston, they probably wouldn't win. So
right now they'd be playing Boston.
Yeah, and they probably wouldn't win. It maybe could go 6 games, but they most likely would not win that series. But this is a good year anyways for the Knicks. I mean, just to be able to, at this point in the season, be like, we actually have a real shot at making the playoffs and be somewhat of a top seed, like a 5 or a 6 seed, that's really good, especially for a year where I think most people thought that they'd be pretty bad. They'd trade Randall. They'd look to make moves, get ready for next offseason where they could try and trade for someone or sign someone, be top pick in the draft, where right now that's not the case, and I think that's a good thing. Even though Randall, we'll have to see if he can actually keep playing like this in the future. I'm a little down on him only because I just don't think it's a 7th year in the league. I just don't think he's this type of guy. But maybe he is. And if he is, then that's someone you can keep and sign for. I think he's 1 more year after this year, so you could sign him to a long-term contract. And then, is he a number 1? No. Is he a number 2? Possibly.
Randall?
No, I'm saying number 2 on like a team like a Knicks, like that, a team that could be a playoff team, not like a championship team, like a team that's like a playoff team. Because
I
like
mean, I
the
didn't know
RJ's no, yeah, I wasn't saying that. I was saying, like, could RJ be a number 1 right now? It seems like no. So, you definitely still need that number 1 guy who could be your guy. But I think on like a playoff team, Randall's like a number 2 guy. You know what I'm saying? Not a championship team, like a team that can just consistently make the playoffs.
I mean,
because that's where they are right now. That's where they're going to be for a couple of years.
And the kind of problem I was just talking about with Murray kind of exists with Randall in the same way. Is just like, what is he even worth? Because the worst thing you can really have on a team is when you get a player like Randall, he plays very well. You sign him to a very solid contract, and then he kind of plateaus and/or regresses a bit. And then you are just stuck with a bad contract, and then you can't afford to bring in somebody, because the Knicks right now, this is the first time in a long time that they've actually shown a little bit of competency. You know that people want to play for New York, assuming New York isn't super dysfunctional. I'd like to be able to keep money open to bring in. The thing is, you don't even know who it would be down the road, but I'd like to keep that money there, because you're not going to win the championship with Randall as a top. He'd have to be your 4th best player. At best, your 4th.
I think he could be a 3rd with the way he's playing right now. The problem is you'd need a point guard just because he's a forward, and you'd assume your number 1 would be like a small forward. But they need a point guard who could be like a very solid option who could give you like 20 points a night.
I guess what would you give Randall if you're negotiating an extension? What are you giving him? I probably wouldn't give him more than low 20s. And I'd be scared to give him low 20s because there's a possibility he's only worth 12.
Yeah, and that's a decision that they're going to have to make, is that, is he really going to keep being this type of guy where he can give you 22 to 25, like 10 rebounds, 4 or 5 assists? He's shooting a lot better than he ever has in his career from 3. And he's 26 years old right now. Basically, at the start of next season, he'll be 27. So he's still fairly young. You could probably sign him to like a 4-year contract, and he'd probably be pretty good throughout that contract unless he really regressed. But it's a tough decision, because if you don't have like a true number 1, like a star guy you got in the draft, or someone you traded for, or someone in the offseason, how much can you pay him? Because I don't know if unless RJ takes a big step, he's not going to be able to lead your team to like a top 3 seed in the East and actually be in contention for like an Eastern Conference Finals appearance or something like that. No. That's the point where, like, if you want to give him a contract, how much do you actually want to give him? Because you don't want to be stuck with that contract and being, a fringe playoff team every single year if no one ever developed or you never got someone.
The Knicks deterred away somebody like a Durant and Irving. LeBron wouldn't have never gone to New York, but all these types of players, they're just not going to go to New York, or they weren't at least, because they were so dysfunctional. Now that you're actually a little bit competent, you really can't afford to just waste your cap room to the point where like you can only bring in 1 max or something like that, because you want to have at least 2 maxes open at all times as the Knicks, because I think that's probably your best path to becoming championship contenders, at least, unless you're going to draft your way there, and then which case they're all on cheap contracts anyways. But I wouldn't dedicate big money to Randall. I would have him play out the rest of his contract, see where you're at there. My mind hasn't changed that I don't think he's worth more than 20. If I had to give him a contract right now, I would be hesitant to give him more than 17 or 18 mil a year. So yeah. I really, it would be tough to give him 22, because if I give him 22, then he has to play probably at least as good as he's playing right now for me to think it's worth it. And even then, I'm not exactly sure how the cap money would work out, but if it's even in jeopardy of getting to the point where it's like, on top of other contracts obviously on the team where you can't bring in 2 max contracts, if you get maybe like a Tatum and a Beal who want to go to New York, if you lose out on an opportunity like that because you wanted to extend Randall because he had 1 year where he was like a fringe all-star,
yeah, they'll definitely wait till after next season to see how he's still playing and then decide if they want to give him a contract. And that, yeah, I'd probably say like a 20 mil per year contract. I mean, right now he's making $19 million, so I'd probably say 20 to 22. I think is fair for like 4 years or something like that. But again, that depends on how he's playing. He's never gonna get like anywhere close to 30. So he'd have to understand that no matter how good he's playing, it'd be in that 20 to 22 range.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think that wraps it up for this episode. Check the description for everybody. Also, I mean, feel free to subscribe, like, comment, all that stuff. Comment whether it's feedback or whatever stuff we should work on. Comment at all. Description as social medias. Description as the clips channel, which I guess it's not necessarily every video, but a lot of videos we'll be uploading on there. Just clips of the podcast, 10-minute-ish digestible clips. So feel free to subscribe there. All the other social media is down in the description. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I ended up getting the haircut, which is nice. So, but we'll be back. We'll be back Friday at noon.
Yeah.